Today, we're going to design an acid-style bass using BioTek 3. This sound is iconic in electronic music, especially in acid house and techno, thanks to its resonant filter and aggressive character. Let's build it from scratch. As usual, we'll load a clean patch. From the Oscillator 1 menu, we'll select a saw wave, since it's the classic waveform for this type of sound. Now lower it 1 octave to give it more body and presence in the low frequencies. We'll now configure envelope 4 to achieve the snappy attack and response of a classic acid bass. Set the attack to around 1 millisecond for an instant response, the decay to around 500 milliseconds for a quick drop, the sustain at 0% to prevent the note from holding, and the release to around 100 milliseconds to avoid an abrupt cutoff. The acid sound is largely defined by a low-pass filter with resonance, modulated by an envelope to create the signature movement. Navigate to and activate filter 1. We'll select low-pass 24 decibels from the filter menu. Now locate the cutoff parameter and turn it all the way down. Then set the resonance to around 35%. This will emphasize the harmonics and achieve that acid character. Now, we'll assign envelope 3 to the filter cutoff and adjust the modulation settings. Click the envelope 3 button to enter assign mode. Now, set the cutoff modulation amount to around 30%. And then set the resonance modulation amount to around 50%. Moving back to the envelope, we'll set an attack of around 2 milliseconds. A decay of around 400 milliseconds. Bring the sustain to 0%, and set the release to around 100 milliseconds. Adjust the decay curve until you're happy with the result. Somewhere around 50 typically works well. The acid sound is all about the filter movement over time. To achieve this, we'll modulate the filter cutoff using note velocity. This will create dynamic variations throughout the sequence and generate the classic opening and closing effect of acid bass lines. Now we go to the Source 1 tab, click on Velocity as the modulation source. Then assign 35% modulation depth to the Filter 1 cutoff parameter. To add more character and presence, we'll introduce some distortion. Go to the FX tab and select a high-pass 12 filter. Cut everything below 100 Hz to keep the low end clean from the distortion we'll be adding. In another slot, load the distortion module from the FX menu. In the Type menu, we'll select Clip. Now, increase the drive to around 15%. A classic acid bass tends to sound dry in the mix, but we can add reverb and delay to give it more depth and a modern touch. First, the reverb. We will use the natural reverb. We'll set a short decay of around 1 second to avoid muddying the sound. Then, set the size to around 40%. Adjust the low cut to around 250 Hz. And finally, dial in the mix to around 10% so that we retain the bass punch. And now, for the delay. We'll enable the clock and then choose dotted 8 note from the options. Set the feedback to around 10%. The spread to around 35. Adjust the low-pass filter to around 140 Hz. And finally, dial in the mix to around 10%. This will provide some subtle movement without cluttering the sound. To get the classic acid-style note slides, close the FX session and navigate to the Glide module and increase the glide time to between 100 and 200 milliseconds. This will create smooth transitions between notes. Finally, navigate to the Common module and set it to Mono. featuring its resonant filter movement, distortion for aggressiveness, and effects for added depth. Our acid-bass sound is now complete. Pay close attention when sequencing this sound, and use fast, dynamic patterns with slides and accent variations to enhance the groove. See you in the next video.